We all have short memories. We all forget about what happened in Texas during the hurricane. We all forget about that. It's amazing how quick things are filed into the dusty shelves of our brains. And people talk about the epic flooding today in the Midwest, and there's a Category 1 just inundating Louisiana, New Orleans right now. But people don't understand what's going on. And the news and the weather people have no inclination to share with you clearly the big picture. First of all, our jet stream is dominated by these monster vortexes. They call them Arctic vortexes. That term did not even apply 10, 15 years ago. But now they do, because these are a new phenomenon set up by possibly HAARP, which is a bad name anymore, but VLF, very low frequency radio waves, microwaves, being, millions and millions of watts of energy being poured into the atmosphere to create artificial high and artificial low pressure zones. But the cause of this flooding, it's happened before. This scenario has been played out over and over and over again, just in different parts of the world and different parts of the United States. And having been involved in some of this flooding, it's extremely, extremely upsetting to see what's going on and then have other people try to intentionally mislead you. First of all, from January until early March, average temperatures in the Midwest remained in the low 20 to 30 average degree, and that's the Fahrenheit range, which is kind of cooler than normal. But we've had these Arctic vortexes that reach all the way up to the Arctic, spin, and bring cold air further south than ever. If that's your ice age, you need to step back and look at the big picture. The record snowfall in many areas, and I was part of this, including the early March blizzard, left up to 3 feet on the ground in some areas in a matter of a day or two. In Nebraska, over the course of 3 days, from March 11th to March 13th, all of a sudden what happened? Well, those vortexes moved on, and now we were left at the mercy of the sun. Temperatures suddenly rose to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, a 40-degree increase. Wow. And then came hot rain. And we warned about hot rain before, and not just a little, but 1.5 inches of rain. And that's what we were saying as many as 3 years ago, that on the snowpacks, especially when the Sierra Nevadas got dumped on 3-4 years ago, we said that all it would take would be 1.5 to 2 inches of hot rain, and California would be toast. They got just a little bit of hot rain, and California was almost toast. But this quickly melted the snow. Again, people who focus in on we're going to be freezing soon, they cover the snow. Look, a blizzard in March, and they throw it in your face, and they talk about it, and they use the term Maunder minimum, which is a theory, by the way, and not factual. This melt, then somehow the word melt is a word that's impossible for some of these people to say. Come on, try it with me, you Maunder minimum ice age people. Let's try it. MELT spells melt. Okay, well, this quickly melted the snow, and we've warned about this before. We've covered the February floods, and even up in the Yukon. We've covered all this once upon a time when we had a channel with 80,000 subs. But the frozen ground was not able to absorb any meaningful amounts of moisture. This led to unprecedented runoff into local streams and rivers. Unprecedented. And that's what happens when you get a late snow, and it snows at, trust me, it snows at 40 degrees. It snows at 38 degrees. So when it's snowing at 38 and all of a sudden you have a little bump in temperature, that stuff melts in a hurry. So the saturated soils, combined with elevated river flow from the previous fall, led to severe widespread flooding across the eastern U.S. Many of the rivers were still frozen over with a thick layer of ice when these rivers started rising. This meant that there was a huge, powerful flow of water and created massive amounts of floating ice that traveled downstream, acting like a plow and taking out bridges and killing people. Not very many, but a few people died. But Illinois was subject to intense rain, even as little as 3 weeks ago, pounding rain. Their National Guard was activated to assist with efforts along the Illinois and Mississippi River. Iowa itself was affected by the heavy rains and flooding, closing parts of all 9 state parks. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds signed an emergency disaster proclamation on March 14th. Flooding across Iowa was described as, quote, catastrophic. Especially the Mississippi River Valley, south of Council Bluffs, Iowa. There are at least 30 levee failures and have flooded towns and highways. Interstates were closed from Council Bluffs to the Missouri state border and from there to St. Joseph's, Missouri, with portions of the interstate under, get this, 15 feet of water where you used to drive your car. Just in Iowa alone, the damage was estimated to be $1.6 billion. That's a state record. That will bankrupt many states. So how can the world keep tolerating this? I mean, and all of these places lost gas, they lost power, and they lost their sewage. Missouri, the entire community of Craig, Missouri, as well as parts of St. Joseph's, Missouri, had been evacuated. You had to evacuate. Portions of Interstate 29 had been under 15 feet of water. On March 21st, a state of emergency was issued by Governor Mike Parson, who said, quote, the rising floodwaters are affecting more Missouri communities and farms, closing more roads and threatening levees, water treatment plants, and other critical infrastructure. We will continue to work closely with our local partners to assess the needs and provide the resources to help Missourians continue this flood fight as we work to assist one another. You know, there's very little assistance you can provide when your city is under 15 feet of water. What are you going to do? Bring a water pump? Nebraska, March 14th, the Spencer Dam on the Niobrara River collapsed, and the unrestrained flooding destroyed 3 bridges downstream, including the Highway 281 bridge in eastern central Nebraska. Residents along the flooded Missouri, the Platte, and the Elkhorn rivers were forced to evacuate as some locals experienced all-time record flooding. I mean, we've been using these words for 10 years now, since 2011. All-time record. Unprecedented. I mean, unprecedented. I guess people don't get what unprecedented means. You know what it means? It means it never has happened before in the modern history of mankind. That's what unprecedented means. And sometimes we have unprecedented events that are a year or 2 or 3 later are outdone by even bigger, more unprecedented events. In Nebraska, the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, evacuated a third of its residents. The Platte and Elkhorn rivers had overflowed their levees to the greater Omaha, Nebraska region, and some communities were put under a mandatory evacuation. The Platte River at numerous sites had reached flooding of historical proportions, with some sites breaking all-time record flood levels by as much as 5 feet. I mean, that's blowing the record out of the water. Usually you inch out world records, but we're blowing them away. Even the heat records of 2016 blew away the heat records of 2011. I mean, and you know, people say, well, the whole world's gonna warm by 2 degrees in 10 years. It's already, when you're 5 and 7 degrees above a world record, you're already there. And on March 15th, access to the city of Fremont was blocked due to all roads being closed in and out of the city. These people were cut off. This remained the case days later, with National Guard military convoys being set up to get food and other supplies into the island city. Offutt Air Base had extensive flooding from the Platte River, inundating 30 buildings and 3,000 feet of their only runway. The base received damage that is said to be not repaired and cannot be repaired for months, which has caused some events to be moved back. Camp Ashland, one of the Nebraska National Guard's main training sites, was also extensively damaged, with 51 of 62 buildings affected. That's almost all your buildings. Military representatives stated that the flooding is the worst that the camp has seen in the history of the camp, including a serious flood from 2015 that cost $3.7 million in repairs. This flood outdid it. And that's what I'm talking about. You have unprecedented just being replaced by more unprecedented events. And they said it'll be months before the base can even support even minimal operations. Guess they weren't prepared. On March 18th, Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts declared a state of an emergency and stated that the floods caused the most extensive damage our state has ever experienced. Why? Because of warm rain and warm snow, high precipitation. So when we say be prepared, we mean it. Be prepared. And if you live in a 500-year flood zone, you're still not safe. So follow your weather. Follow your snowpacks. Flooding is easy to predict. When you have a 50-foot snowpack in the Sierra Nevadas and you got rain on the way, it's time to take a vacation out of your flood zones. And then what happens? 6 months after this flooding, we have intense heat, we have intense dry spells, and all of a sudden, now a place that was flooded is now on fire. Only thing that can do that to us is rising temperatures. That'll do it. Rising temperatures will break out your jet streams out of its normal path. Rising temperatures will create extremes. People are ignorant and they'll say, well, if the temperature is rising, why is it snowing? You know, the temperature didn't rise to 2,000 degrees overnight. And when you living in a frozen world and you turn on your oven and you leave the oven door down in your kitchen to try to heat your kitchen may gain a 1 degree or 2, but it still doesn't mean the water will not freeze in the glass that's on the completely opposite side of your kitchen.